Welcome to Simo University. I'm Landry Simo, scientist in the mind, philosopher in the heart, and founder of Simo University, the world's first university for kids. At Simo University, we strongly believe all kids are geniuses and only need permission to remain so. Our vision is to have our students finish high school by age 10 and earn a PhD doctorate by the age of 18. And yes, it's possible, and we are proving this day after day. Hundreds of students have joined us already, and together we are creating the education system of the 21st century. Sometimes it takes decades to see the effect of a slow poison. It spreads silently, it targets the nervous system, and one day we realize what we thought was nourishing us was actually destroying everything. This is exactly what happened with the school system. Not Plato's school, not the artisan school of genius, but the one we know today. Grades, rigid programs, pointless homework, overcrowded classrooms, and suffocating minds. Modern school doesn't create brilliant minds. It standardizes them. It kills their unicity, their uniqueness. It doesn't elevate consciousness, it conditions it. And worst of all, it doesn't develop intelligence. It literally atrophies it. In this video, I will show you how school literally destroys the circuits of intelligence, biologically, emotionally, and even cognitively. And more importantly, I will open a path, a clear protocol to repair what the system has already broken. But first, a short story. One day, a mother wrote to me. Her 6-year-old cried every night and every morning before going to school. Yet, he was bright, he was passionate about planets and dinosaurs. And she said, he has no drive anymore. School had turned off the light. And I looked at his homework, mechanical additions, copy-paste sentences, a quiz on the seasons. Nothing was technically wrong, but everything was empty. What school calls education is often a ritual of cognitive impoverishment. That's how I call it. And science confirms it. Learning is a biological process. It follows precise laws. Neuroplasticity, which requires motivation and novelty. Dopaminergic reinforcement, triggered only when the child is active in the learning. Multisensory activations, essential for deep memory encoding. This is well known in the scientific literature. But what does school do? It sits children in chairs for 6 hours. It bombards them with disconnected information. It imposes a collective norm instead of awakening their uniqueness, their idiosyncrasy, as I call it. As a result, the hippocampus overloads. The prefrontal cortex shuts down. And then dopamine drops. And the natural consequence of this is that intelligence collapses. Let's be honest. The modern school system is a machine for obedience, but not for intelligence. Let's go back to the biology. Many studies show clearly that a child's brain retains much more when they explore something themselves compared to when they passively memorize, sit down and listen. The ventral tegmental area, which produces dopamine, only activates when the child feels they are discovering something on their own. But do you realize what that means? Every time a child sits through a lesson they don't understand, with no context, with no meaning, with no direct connection to their daily life, they deactivate their own intelligence. They enter what we call survival mode. They learn to guess what the teacher wants instead of learning how to think. They learn to answer quickly instead of thinking deeply. They learn to please instead of understanding. That's how collective mediocrity is born. But it gets worse. Repetitive school tasks disconnected from real life creates what's known as extraneous cognitive load. The brain uses up mental energy without building strong mental representations. In other words, the child works but learns nothing. It's like pouring water in a leaking bucket. So a system that teaches without awakening is a system that trains without building. And you want to know what I've seen in the most expensive schools in the world? I've been in many of them. Stressed, overachieving children, but empty. They can reproduce, they cannot think. And what do I see in my programs, in our programs at Simo University? After just a few weeks, children inventing theories, rediscovering the joy of learning, asking questions even adults wouldn't dare to ask. Why is that? Because we don't teach them what to think. We show them how to think. They have the knowledge, they have the skill to think, and then they apply that skill on the knowledge they have on the world. So we reconnect them to the structure of their own brain. We give them back the power to understand. Can you imagine this? Picture a child sitting in a grey classroom. He listens, he copies, he watches the clock, he thinks about recess. Now imagine the same child in a different setting, exploring a forest and learning geometry from the branches, mapping his emotions, building a theory about a bouncing ball, teaching his parents a mini lesson on the brain. Which of these two children is awakening his intelligence, in your opinion? I think you already know the answer. It's quite obvious. But school has forgotten the answer. Or school has just ignored the answer. That's why I founded Simo University, not to do better than school, but to reinvent what learning truly means. Now, I will reveal the 5 fundamental errors that the current school system and the exact neural protocols we are using at Simo University to correct them from the very first week. And this is bringing and showing tremendous results. Because intelligence is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. And if you are here, it's because that responsibility is already calling you. It's crucial to understand that school doesn't fail just because of what it teaches. It fails because of how, and within that how lies the root of the slow erosion of intelligence in our society. Want to know why your child, so vibrant at home, turns dull in the classroom? Why their curiosity fades after just a few months of schooling? Why is that? Why do they struggle even though they are brilliant, they are intelligent? These are the 5 core errors of the school system. And each of these errors quietly disables a different mechanism of intelligence. Let's start with the first one, the error of passive learning. As I said earlier, The brain is not built to absorb information passively. It's built to manipulate, to transform, to explore. But in school, we impose a transmission model. The teacher speaks, and the student listens. The book explains, and the student memorizes. But neuroscience is clear, the scientific literature is clear. The hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex only activate when there is interaction. Long-term memory forms better when the learner generates the answer, even if it's wrong, better than when they just hear the correct answer. In short, a child who makes mistakes while exploring becomes smarter than one who quietly listens to the correct answer. Now let's discuss the era of segmentation. School divides everything. You have subjects, you have time, you have disciplines. Math at 10 a.m., French at 11, history at 2, and maybe science the next day. But the brain works in networks. Isolated learning creates weak neural traces. Integrated, contextualized learning builds strong synapses, sparks creativity, and anchors information deeply in the brain. In our programs, a child learns fractions by cutting and sharing a real pizza, learns rhetoric by debating at the dinner table, logic by solving emotional puzzles. That's neural education. That's preschool. That's the school of the 21st century. Then the era of non-personalization. In school, a gifted child is labeled disruptive. A slow child is labeled a problem. But neuroscience shows us that the rhythm of brain activation varies between individuals and even within the same child day to day. So what we call intelligence is not a fixed trait. It's a contextual flow. So a child who didn't sleep well or experienced a strong emotion can lose 40% of their memory capacity for that day. Yet we test them as if they are stable, everything is fixed. So real pedagogy begins when we stop believing all brains should learn the same thing at the same time, the same way. Era number 3, the era of competition, grades, rankings, comparison. This is the psychological engine of the school system, and it's tremendously toxic. Dopamine, the fuel of motivation, is not triggered by fear of failure. It's triggered by perceived progress, by inner accomplishment. So a curious child activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which drives cognitive self-regulation. And then a pressured child activates the amygdala, the stress center, and blocks their own learning. Do you see the tragedy there? Because there's a real tragedy. The more pressure you put on a child, the less they learn. People really need to understand this. And then the error of forgetting meaning. The worst one, teaching without explaining why. Why multiplication table? Why 1789? Why this poem? The brain is a meaning machine. Without perceived purpose, it rejects information as completely irrelevant. So we give children massive amounts of content without ever linking it to their lives, to their feelings, to their future. At Simo University, we use INS protocol. Every concept is a transformation key. Probability helps predict the world. Metaphors help understand the self. And equations become living readers. That's why they learn fast, they learn deeply, and they learn forever. Imagine this. Imagine a school where your child wakes up excited, where every lesson is an adventure, where they are free to think, to fail, to create, where their uniqueness is celebrated, not normalized, where they feel their brain is becoming a tool for freedom. Yes, this is possible. But it means rethinking everything from scratch. And that's exactly what we are doing at Simo University. Now, I'm going to reveal to you the pillar of our educational protocol, a complete structure validated by science that unlocks intelligence in any child within weeks, any child. And more importantly, I will show you how your role as a parent can become that of an educational master, more powerful than 90% of today's certified teachers. Believe me. So get ready for the transformation that begins now. Because sometimes we must forget everything you have been taught in order to truly understand what it means to learn. School doesn't fail because of lack of resources or because teachers aren't qualified or committed. It fails because it's disconnected from the human brain. It's disconnected from science. And the human brain is a sacred machine, a living structure, a poetic organ. It wasn't designed to memorize lists. It was designed to create meaning, to make sense of things. That's why we create the neurosemantic engineering protocol. It's not a method, it's a biological and symbolic protocol that activates deep brain zones, that triggers neuroplasticity, and then installs autonomous mental architecture in our students' brain. It's not about teaching, it's about reconfiguring intelligence. Do you see the difference there? How do we do it? Then there are 4 specific levers. The first one is guided neuroplasticity. Every day, children activate neural circuits through logic challenges, mental visualization, and complex age-appropriate problems. It's not about repetition, it's targeted stimulation. The brain grows where it's used with intensity. Then the second lever is semantic anchoring. We don't give words, we encode them with power. Each new word becomes a key, a formula, a cognitive incantation. We don't say algorithm without showing how it guides real-life decisions. We don't say resilience without turning the child into a little sage who rises after every fall. Then we use immersive visualization. Every day children close their eyes and every day they reorganize their minds from within. They visualize their growing neurons, their thoughts as beams of light, their emotions as orbs they can shape. The brain doesn't distinguish between well-constructed imagination and real-life lived experiences. This is well known in the scientific literature. So we program experience through thought. It's neurological self-genius. That's how we foster this. Then we have the fourth, strategic metacognition. At the end of each week, the child reflects on how they learn. They become observers of their own mind. And when a child understands how they learn, nothing, absolutely nothing can stop them. A child who understands their own brain no longer needs permission to become Great. That's why in our programs, a child can learn in 3 months, 3 months, what others take 5 years to grasp. Because we don't pour knowledge in their brain, we ignite the inner engine. So now imagine this. Imagine a parent who understands these principles, a parent who applies this protocol, a parent who speaks to their child not like a student, but like a growing consciousness. Like a professor, we call our students professors internally. That's why I offer as well to train parents who are more powerful than 80% of teachers today, not because they know more, but because they understand deeper. They understand what learning truly means, and not now. And now it's your turn. You are watching this video, you feel something is true, you think that's what I've always felt but couldn't put it into words, then that's normal. Because what we are offering at Simo University doesn't come from a ministry or from an educational manual. It comes from ancestral intuition validated by modern science. You don't need permission from the system. You can reclaim your child's intelligence. And you can do that exactly today. Imagine your child 6 months into our programs, speaking with clarity, thinking with structure, and daring to explain ideas, advanced ideas, explaining mental models to friends, reading the world like an open book, and no longer reciting, but creating. On that day, you look in the mirror and you know you chose the right path, the path of the builders, the ones who don't settle for easy, the ones who shape the future with science, with love, with truth. Simo University is not a school, it's a gateway into a new mental civilization. And if you are still here, your heart already knows it. You want your child to become exceptional, and they have the possibility to become exceptional. Find more about us on the website. The link is in the description. And the decision is entirely in your hands. Thank you.